परियोजनाओं का निर्माण कर रही है, जो दर्शाता है कि कंपनी राष्ट्र निर्माण में एक अग्रणी भूमिका निभा रही है। जल विद्युत ऊर्जा का एक स्वच्छ और नवीकरणीय स्रोत है, जो कार्बन न्यूट्रल फ्यूचर की ओर हमारी यात्रा के लिए महत्वपूर्ण है। कम कार्बन फुटप्रिंट के साथ विश्वसनीय बिजली प्रदान करके एनएचपीसी भारत के एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन में एक महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाती है और साथ ही 100% ग्रीन एनर्जी का उत्पादन कर ये देश के कर्मठ नायकों के संकल्प को बल देती है।
भारत रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी रिसोर्सेज में जितना कमांडिंग पोजीशन में होगा, उतना ही बड़ा बदलाव वो पूरे विश्व में ला सकता है।
लेकिन एनएचपीसी का योगदान केवल विद्युत उत्पादन तक सीमित नहीं है। एनएचपीसी सीएसआर के तहत विभिन्न विकासात्मक कार्य करके देश के सुदूर क्षेत्रों में सामाजिक आर्थिक विकास को भी गति प्रदान कर रही है। एनएचपीसी की कर्मभूमि भारत की सीमाओं से परे भी फैली हुई है। भूटान, नेपाल में परियोजनाओं और दुनिया भर में साझेदारी के साथ एनएचपीसी दुनिया के साथ ऊर्जा समाधान साझा करने में लगी है। कंपनी की परामर्श सेवाओं ने जल विद्युत इंजीनियरिंग में नए मानक स्थापित किए हैं, जिससे कंपनी को वैश्विक स्तर की प्रतिष्ठा मिली है। जल विद्युत के साथ ही एनएचपीसी अब सौर ऊर्जा, पवन ऊर्जा और ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन के क्षेत्र में भी नए क्षितिज तलाश रही है। लेटेस्ट जियोलॉजिकल और जियोटेक्निकल स्टडीज से लेकर उन्नत निर्माण तकनीकों तक कंपनी की विशेषज्ञता ये सुनिश्चित करती है कि हर परियोजना एक सस्टेनेबल फ्यूचर की कारक बने। कंपनी का लक्ष्य 2029 तक अपनी क्षमता को दोगुना करना है और 2047 तक विद्युत उत्पादन को 50,000 मेगावाट तक बढ़ाना है। वो दिन दूर नहीं जब एनएचपीसी विश्व पटल पर नवीकरणीय ऊर्जा के क्षेत्र में अग्रणी कंपनी होगी।
एनएचपीसी का अपने स्वर्णिम 50वें वर्ष में प्रवेश करना और नवरत्न का दर्जा हासिल करना जितना महत्वपूर्ण है, उतना ही महत्वपूर्ण है एनएचपीसी का निरंतर प्रगति पथ पर अग्रसित होते रहना। इस उपलब्धि का सबसे अधिक श्रेय यदि किसी को जाता है तो वह हैं एनएचपीसी के सेवानिवृत्त और वर्तमान कार्मिक। एनएचपीसी के कार्मिक कठिन परिस्थितियों में अपने परिवार से दूर रहकर पूरी कर्तव्य निष्ठा के साथ एनएचपीसी की विकास यात्रा में अपना योगदान दे रहे हैं। अब जब एनएचपीसी अपने स्वर्णिम 50वें वर्ष में प्रवेश कर रही है, मैं सभी सेवानिवृत्त और वर्तमान कार्मिकों एवं विशेषकर उनके परिवार के सदस्यों के प्रति अपना आभार प्रकट करता हूं, क्योंकि उनके समर्पण एवं एनएचपीसी के प्रति उनकी उत्कृष्ट भावना के फलस्वरूप ही एनएचपीसी आज इस मुकाम पर पहुंच पाई है। मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि अपने कार्मिकों के कठिन परिश्रम और सहयोग के बल पर एनएचपीसी शीघ्र ही महारत्न कंपनी बनने के अपने सपने को भी साकार करेगी। एनएचपीसी को इस स्वर्णिम यात्रा में सहयोग देने के लिए सभी को धन्यवाद और शुभकामनाएं।
एनएचपीसी अपने स्वर्ण जयंती वर्ष में प्रवेश कर चुकी है। एनएचपीसी के समर्पण और अटूट प्रतिबद्धता ने कंपनी को आज उस मुकाम पर पहुंचाया है जहां वो राष्ट्रीय गौरव का चिन्ह, स्थिरता का प्रतीक और सपनों की संरक्षक बनकर उभरी है। एनएचपीसी केवल एक विद्युत कंपनी नहीं, एक राष्ट्र निर्माता है। एनएचपीसी निरंतर आगे बढ़ रही है, वर्तमान को शक्ति दे रही है और भारत के भविष्य को अविरल ऊर्जा।
Welcome to day 2 of the 22nd HT Leadership Summit. Our theme, Ideas That Inspire, drives us to explore the uncharted territories of knowledge, insights, and visionary ideas. We are honored to welcome a dynamic leader who's been instrumental in shaping the luxury automotive landscape in India, Balbir Singh Dhillon, who is the head of Audi in India. He has a rich experience of the automotive business, gained in a career span of over 23 years, holding multiple leadership and senior management positions in the industry. Driven with a clear vision, Balbir has effectively led, trained, and coached national and international teams, cultivating excellent relationships with the head office, business partners, and suppliers while putting organization on a sustainable and profitable growth trajectory. Here's him in conversation with Mint's Editor-in-Chief Ravi Krishnan.
Welcome to the 22nd edition of the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit. We have with us here today Balbir Dhillon, who heads Audi in India. And we are going to talk about the future of electric vehicles in India. Welcome, Balbir. Thanks for talking to us at the HT Leadership Summit.
Ravi, thank you very much for having me. And congratulations on this Summit, 22nd Summit. I think you're also celebrating 100 years of HT. So really happy to be part of this journey. I mean, I've been an avid reader all this while, and I hope to continue the same.
So let me start by asking you about broad question about the future of EV. Recently, we have seen that, there has been a slowdown in EV sales, not only globally, but also a little bit in India. How do you see the way forward for the industry?
Just keep in mind that, we are in the very beginning of electric mobility. It's not that we've covered a lot of years. It's been a few years that the industry has taken this leap jump into the new segment, in the new technology. And whenever there is a major shift that happens, not just in India, perhaps globally as well, it takes many years because, there are 4 stakeholders that have to come together to make, especially the EVs, to be a success. One is, of course, that the top of the pyramid is the customer. So somebody has to accept these cars and they would be driving these cars. So they are the top of the pyramid. Then peripheral is also the charging infrastructure. So now, we have, let's say, 80,000 fuel station in India, but there are not these many charging points in India. And what kind of charging points, high speed, low speed, all those challenges. Second thing is the charging infrastructure. The third is the policy. Whenever there is this kind of a change, which is anticipated that you need to achieve certain penetration in EVs, we need to have a positive policy framework, across the board, helping from top to bottom. And last but not the least, the OEMs. Whatever contribution we could give from our side, developing the technology, bringing latest technology also into the country, and also helping as much as possible into setting up the charging infrastructure, not just the chargers, but also a lot of peripheral things like softwares, charging application, etc., etc. So I think all of these things come together needs to make this industry successful. And we are running a marathon. It is not a sprint. So we've just run a little bit of this marathon, and I think we'll continue to need to push this. And a lot also, like you mentioned, globally, you're seeing a little bit of a slowdown. A lot of incentives have been given to the industry in the past. Whenever the incentives are taken back, you will always see this slowdown that happens. But I think all of this is temporary. over a period of time, we should see the industry further growing up. And last but not the least, you don't have all the models available across the board right now. Whether even if I talk of Audi, we only represent a certain segment of customers. We are importing certain number of cars. We are importing certain costly, let's say, cars at a certain cost and above. We don't have cars available across the board. And same, if you see in general in the automotive industry in India as well, not all of the manufacturers are participating in across the board. So I think when we have all the models, when you have charging infrastructure, you will see this growing. So like I say, there will be ups and downs. Automotive industry moves ups and downs. So this will be part of our life. We'll need to be resilient. We need to be clear on our focus that we need to continue to push this topic. So I think ups and downs will be part of life, but we need to be clearly focused and continue to grow.
So from your interactions with customers and people who are in the market to buy vehicles, what do you think is the single most important factor which influences their decision, to buy electric vehicles or not go for electric vehicles? Because in a recent survey, which I read recently, about 55% of people who are already electric vehicle owners said they wanted to go back to internal combustion engine vehicles.
The cars that we've sold in India, we've been in touch with our customers very, very closely, personally meeting them, speaking them. So multiple things. In our segment in luxury space, first of all, our customers have multiple cars. So, electric cars is not the only car. It is one of the cars, mostly what they own. So when it comes to running these cars within a city, all our customers are very, very comfortable because you have now, a single fully charged car can give you up to 600 kilometers, 550, 600 kilometers of range. So within city, there is absolutely no trouble. So one of the challenges our customers do talk about is if they need to move within 2 cities, then what is a comfort zone? The next topic, which we when we got into a little more detailing, we were also checking with them that yes, we have charging points in between 2 cities. So the next question comes from their side is that what if the charger is not working when I go there? These are the kind of nuances, these are the kind of questions, resale value of these cars. All of these are the topics which, because these are products which are just, let's say, 2 to 3 years old, the resale values are not yet established. There are always questions in customers' mind. Will I lose more value? So all of these kind of questions remain in a customer's mind. And this is our duty. This is what we do on a daily basis. We try to find answers to these questions. And we've, when we launched the car, we had certain products which we had launched along with the car, some software, my Audi application. We've also evolved over the last 2-3 years of time, basis our customers' feedback. So I think these are some of the challenges. Charging infrastructure is one for sure. And resale value is another topic for sure. I probably would beg to differ because most of our customers that we speak to have not talked to us to this percentage which you mentioned, that half of the customer want to go back to ICE. So I don't think so that be the case, but this could be different for different segment of customers. Maybe, like I said, our customers own more than one car, so for them owning a car is an electric car has been really pleasure so far.
Right. So you have been setting up an open charging infrastructure in different regions of the country. What kind of challenges are you facing in setting up this charging infrastructure?
Well, first and foremost is the geography of the country. So you can understand we are a very large geography. We have set up 140 charging points. Most of this is at our dealerships or our group brand dealerships. We've also set up ultra fast charging station in BKC in Mumbai. So, there will always be a limitation for us that we at the end of the day are not a charging infrastructure company. So physical charging infrastructure will always remain a limitation, though we're trying as much as we can to be part of this journey. What we've done otherwise is for all our customers, we have created a My Audi application, which is a charging hub where a customer can define their journey where they're going from A to B, and they'll be guided on their journey to the close by charging points. We have 1,000+ chargers on that app, to the extent that customers know if a particular charger is working or not working. So there is a live feed that comes into this application. So this is our journey that we have had. We have set up, let's say, over 10 special repair workshop for the batteries, because we need to set up at our workshops and at least. So our investments is not just into charging infrastructure, also to maintain these cars. We have hundreds of technicians who have been trained on this because of the longevity of the product. Any car that we sell, we need to service that car for 10-15 years. So we are all preparing ourselves for all of this, and this takes time. Battery disposal, all of these tie-ups for battery disposals. So these are all the background activities that continue to be part of our challenges. I would say not challenges. Let's talk of opportunities. So this is the background work that we need to do, and this we are doing, and it takes time. I think we've evolved with a lot of learnings that we had from our customers, and we hope that in the coming times we will be able to penetrate more than what we have today so far.
How do you see this network of this charging stations which you have set up? How do you see it evolving in the future? Are you planning to get into any partnerships with other entities to expand it?
Oh, absolutely. All the ideas are open. In fact, what we have done, wherever we have set up the chargers, we already have partnerships that we have with the charging point operators. So this is always in conjunction with partners who have the full expertise on this topic, because we can contribute to some extent, but we also need, let's say, technical support or infrastructure that needs to be managed. So there are tie-ups that we work closely, and this is how we intend to also grow in the future.
How do you see, government policy, both at the center and the state? How do you see it affecting, the future of the EV industry? I mean, what is your assessment?
I would say most of the countries where there have been a major success that has been achieved in electric mobility, countries like Norway, Iceland, Sweden, Netherlands, etc., all this has come on the back of very strong support by the government. So this is the basis on which this shift can happen. So our government, we are very happy that the initiatives that have been taken by the central government. The GST is 5% as compared to 48 to 50% otherwise for the ICE cars in the luxury space that we are in. Otherwise, the government is also helping in making the charging infrastructure better. Apart from the state, some of the state governments also have lesser registration costs. So I think all of this is helping us. Well, if you say, is it enough? The answer will always be, we can always get better. We can always get some more support. Because when we sell cars in India, part of these cars are being sold if we import them fully, and let's say 90% of otherwise the cars that we sell in India are mostly assembled in India. So there is always that gap. If we import, the import duties are very high. So wherever there is a possibility for the government to help us, at least 5, 7, 10 years till the time there's a certain percentage of penetration is achieved, I think that that needs to be continued. I think what we expect from the government is a stable policy where we can plan for 3 to 5 to 10 years ahead of us. And that's how we work. So I think in general, we are very positive because there is a focus, very clear focus. Every communication that you hear from the government, from the ministries is clearly on the electrification. So that to that extent, we are very happy. We just need consistency, and I'm very hopeful that this will continue and we will achieve more penetration in the times to come.
Is there any particular policy tweak that you think is needed, especially for the luxury EV segment?
I think most importantly for me, I would still say that if wherever the state governments have given some concession of registration of EVs, that continues for the coming years, because we've also seen that in some of the states it's been withdrawn. So suddenly when these kind of incentives are withdrawn, you see customers shying away from buying the vehicles. I think the most important topic still would be if there is a way that the government can help to improve the high-speed charging infrastructure across the country. And also if there is a possibility to bring one app where all the charging point operators can bring their charging stations on one single app for ease of operations, where the payment gateway is available, just like UPI is a common factor where you can pay to anybody today. Similarly, if there is a charging app that could be developed centrally, I think everybody could join the same app, and this could help improve that mindset of our customers, where they feel I don't know where to go and charge. So I think these are some of the things which are a little softer, and some of the things where we need really concrete step so that the charging infrastructure improves and we are able to sell more cars.
The PM eDrive scheme has laid some emphasis on charging infrastructure. Do you think that is sufficient?
I think any effort that comes by is positive. There can always be things that you can do better, more, but anything, it's only helping upwardly, it's only helping positively. So I think that the talk itself, that you are showing a direction, is good enough many times for us to decide for our future products, that this is the that direction that is coming from the government. So I think all of this is definitely helpful, as in when it gets executed on the ground in the real life, where we see it's whenever you come with these new ideas, you always will have challenges in implementing, and over a period of time, then you do the course correction and then refine all of these ideas. And this is where the practically the real life ease to the customers comes by. I think it's a positive step, and we wish that it works well, and we continue to get even more support from the government.
Battery costs are, a very high component of electric vehicles. And given the way that, how there are these rare earth components also which go into batteries, where China has a hold, how do you see, value chain, supply chains, or rather global value chains around EVs evolving? Because the high prices of electric vehicles is also one constraint in their adoption, isn't it?
No, you're right. I think two-sided answer. One is the recycling of the batteries. Once we have to achieve that over a period of time, where the outgoing batteries are being replenished, reused, and of course the first question is again how the supply chains are. I think as the volumes grow, the cost will come down, and we are in the process of achieving those threshold volumes. May not be in India yet for us, I would say, but over a period of time for our group, we have started manufacturing these batteries in multiple of our plants globally, and as we start manufacturing ourselves, the cost will come down. So there is no doubt about it. But of course, like you said, rare earth metals, there is a dominance of certain players, certain countries that will remain. I mean, we are also living in a world where we largely dependent on oil on other countries. So this, dependency on one another will always remain. We are a part of a global company, so this will continue to be. But I think as the volumes grow, the cost will come down. We have not yet reached there.
Is it only economies of scale that are going to drive battery costs down, or is some R&D also happening where we can hope that push?
Absolutely, both sides. I think like I said, it's been a couple of years only into this technology, so you will see more and more technology coming by, and of course the scale that grows. So both-sided approach, I would say.
Audi itself has been importing many of its models from the global EV portfolio. Are there any plans to manufacture some of these vehicles in India?
Well, you're right. We were one of the first ones to launch many cars. We in fact had 4 SUVs, and we were the first one to launch the 2 sports cars in the EV space way back about 3 years back. I cannot give you the answer right now, but we are evaluating, because now in our global portfolio, we are globally launching certain new products on the new platform. So we are in discussion with our headquarters. We also need a minimum threshold volume to even assemble these cars in India. So we are working with the headquarters. I don't have an answer, positive or negative right now, but very seriously, we are working on these topics. And as soon as I have some news, I'll be able to share.
But what factors would influence this decision?
Mostly the volumes, because you have to keep in mind that, whenever, even if I sell one car, we sell one car in the country, we have to service that car for 10, 15 years. So a minimum threshold is required for us to take that decision, and which particular model is, successful so last 3 years, whatever we've been able to sell in India, that has given us experience to also decide the future. So whether you pick up SUVs or pick up sedans or you pick up sportbacks, so what body type will be more successful, what minimum threshold volume, what kind of policies are existing, which will lead us to reach certain volume. So we need to plan 3 to 5 years, and so that minimum volumes is what we need for any particular car to be made in India. So I think we are in the process of defining these parameters for some of our future products. And once we are able to crack that with our headquarters, I think that's the time when we should be able to share more details on this. But yeah, I think single word answer is volumes.
Circling back to this, this battery issue, there is also, one section of experts who are saying that, maybe we should focus a little bit on flex fuels and hybrid vehicles in the short to medium term, before we focus fully on electric vehicles. What are your views on that?
Well, I will limit here my views mostly on the luxury space, or specifically where we operate. So I think our stand has been very clear, and I will tell you also why. That we are moving from ICE to electric straight. We are not looking at any intermediary step. The reason is the luxury space in India is still very small. We'll end up selling about, let's say, 4.2 million cars this year, but we will end up selling just about 50,000 cars in the luxury space. And that 50,000, 40,000, 50,000 has remained for many years now. So the luxury space still is very small. And you have all the players, let's just say, 80, 90, or 100 models in the luxury space are existing for this 50,000 cars. So if you just look at per model sale, it is just about 500. So the volumes still are very, very limited. So I think all of this does play a big role in our decisions on these topics. And I think as we evolve, as the industry evolves, as we grow further, we will be able to bring in more models that are made in India.
So in your assessment, let's say by 2030, what percentage of luxury vehicle sales will be made up by electric vehicles?
Well, first and foremost, I think as per our current assessment, if the things remain same, the luxury space should be close to about 100,000 cars, let's say somewhere in 2030, 2032, around that period. I think our assessment is between 40 to 50% should be electric vehicles. So because we are also moving in this direction globally, Audi has decided to be a fully electric car company. That's the decision from our board, from our headquarters. By 2033, probably 1 or 2 years up and down. So we are already moving in that direction, and that's one of the reasons why electric cars to be made in India is only a matter of time. It is not the question of if; it's a question of when. So I think in terms of penetration, luxury space could achieve this kind of penetration in next 8 to 10 years time.
And what about the overall market? The government is aiming for 30% EV penetration by 2030. Do you think that is optimistic or realistic?
I think a little optimistic, but let me also put a caveat that if we are able to develop the charging infrastructure properly, and if we are able to give that convenience to our customers, it's very much possible. But this is something which needs to be taken on very high priority, and needs to be worked upon by all the stakeholders together, and able to offer this to our customers. And I think it's possible, but a bit challenging.
I mean, in those examples you gave of countries which have like very high EV penetration, like Iceland and Norway, how does the charging infrastructure, I mean, who ultimately took responsibility? Is it the government's responsibility? Is it the OEM's responsibility? Or should, how did it come up? What model should India, look to implement there?
So one of the thing is that geographically, those countries are not as big as India. So that is one thing which we have to keep in mind. But also, you have to keep in mind that this development of these countries have been a common, the joint effort. The government's direction was very clear. So there were very strong incentives, not just to the cars buyers, but to the manufacturers as well as to the charging infrastructure companies. So most of the OEMs, they tied up with all these charging infrastructure companies and set up their charging network. So that is, I think, that is a mantra of success. Consistent policies with strong support to everybody, customers, OEMs, and charging infra companies. I think combination of all of this made these countries have the kind of penetration they have. I think if I'm not wrong, Norway has touched almost 80% now.
Well, then charging infrastructure, I think, remains the key to allay range anxiety and accelerate the adoption of EVs.
When I say charging infrastructure, I mean to say high-speed charging infrastructure, so that you charge in 30 minutes and move on. It's not that you need to stand there for 3 hours, 4 hours. So high speed, 120 kilowatts, 150 kilowatts, that's what we need, especially on the highways. For the cities, it's workable because most of the cars that we sell, we give an additional charger at home or an office. So within city, there is no problem. Highways is where we need high speed charging infra. So that is what our requirement would be.
Thank you, Balbir, for sparing time to have this discussion with us on the future of EVs in India.
It was my pleasure, Ravi. Thank you so much.
Next up, we are thrilled to welcome one of the foremost minds in the fields of computer science, privacy, and artificial intelligence, Professor Arvind Narayanan. He's a professor of computer science at Princeton University and the director of the Center for Information Technology Policy. His work was among the first to show how machine learning reflects cultural stereotypes, and his doctoral research showed the fundamental limits of de-identification. Narayanan was one of Times inaugural list of 100 most influential people in AI. He's a recipient of the Presidential Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineers. So let's hear him in conversation with HT's Vishal Mathur.
Hello to all our viewers to this year's Hindustan Times Leadership Summit. It's special because this year your loved Hindustan Times is 100 years strong. And it's also special because we are joined by a very special guest, Professor Arvind Narayanan from the Princeton University. Well, he really needs little introduction because he is the definitive voice about the personal technology, a lot of the technology that we interface with on a daily basis, and of course, the inevitable questions that come with it. Artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency, ethics in AI, the way technology tracks us on the internet. Those are just some examples. Thank you, Professor, for joining us. If I may begin.
Hello, Nathan. It's great to be here. I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you. In your new book, AI Snake Oil, you've referenced very nicely your fears about the availability of AI to consumers as a major societal problem. What would you tell consumers out there in terms of how they should be using the tools that are already available to them and save themselves from the inevitable pitfalls that come eventually?
AI has many benefits. It also has risks. AI being widely available to consumers is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, for the first time now in the last few years, it is the case that anyone can access really, really powerful AI systems that previously may have been only available to companies and governments. So we think that's largely a good thing. But of course, we can only realize the positives if we're very, very aware of the risks. We know what the risks are, broadly speaking. We have things like students using AI to cheat and therefore not getting as much benefit out of education as they otherwise might. We have people using AI to create non-consensual nude images of people. This is, of course, affecting hundreds of thousands of primarily women in every country in the world. So there are many of these types of misuses that are possible. Now, for some of these types of misuses, I think it's the individual's responsibility primarily, although companies should certainly improve their products. So when we're talking about misuses like, for instance, lawyers who are using AI to try to get help in making their legal arguments, and they don't realize that these chatbots can, quote unquote, hallucinate, they can generate wrong information. And, there have been many stories of lawyers getting into trouble with judges. I think that's a matter of people needing to be better informed about the limitations of these systems. And the companies developing them need to make more clear what the limitations are. On the other hand, when we look at other risks, like the things we were talking about, the creation of deepfakes, for instance, those should be addressed by regulation. It's not a matter of saying everybody should use these tools responsibly. There will always be bad actors, and we need regulation to address those. And finally, in the book, we distinguish between generative AI, which is what I've been talking about so far, and predictive AI, which is used to make consequential decisions about people when we apply for a job, when we apply for a loan, or even in the criminal justice system in many countries. And this is a very dubious kind of AI. It's being used to predict who will commit a crime, who will pay back a loan. These are things that are hard to predict. And so these AI systems are being used in very unjust ways. And I think as a society, we should be really careful about them. We need more regulation. We need companies to think more carefully about how they're using these systems.
Inherently, with something like generative AI, which needs data sets to learn what it eventually learns, is it really possible for it to perhaps avoid problems like bias or hallucinations?
In the last couple of years, there has been a lot of progress made on the problem of bias. So, for instance, one kind of bias is that if generative AI is primarily trained on text and images from the Western world, it might not be very good at, for instance, speaking in Indian languages or correctly visually representing the culture in many countries of the world. This has been a problem for a long time. Things are actually improving. There are ways to incorporate more diverse data sets in the training of these systems. There are ways after they have been trained to kind of fine-tune their behavior so that they're better aware of cultural differences, nuances. Progress is happening on these fronts. It's not going to be perfect. The hallucination problem, I think, has been harder to solve, but I think more and more we are seeing chatbots that don't necessarily answer questions from their memory, so to speak, but retrieve information from the web and try to summarize that information. That cuts down the rate of hallucinations. It doesn't completely solve the problem. So I think for the time being, users of generative AI have to be aware that this is an inherent limitation. I don't know on what time frame it's going to be solved, if ever. So it's going to be our responsibility to be more careful.
You mentioned the example of lawyers getting into trouble with judges. There have been numerous examples of students getting into trouble in schools by using generative AI tools to answer their assignments. Why do you think humans are not really stepping in when they could easily identify that the generative AI tool is giving them wrong information? Why are humans being incapable of correcting technology, if we may?
I think maybe I'm a little more optimistic than that. I think we do see many people using these tools in a responsible way. But when someone makes a mistake, of course, that's more likely to make the news if there's a funny story of a lawyer who has submitted a brief in court that is full of incorrect citations, made up cases, and so forth. So we hear about that a lot more, I think, than the millions of people who are using generative AI in beneficial ways and are aware of the limitations. But that said, with any new technology, there is going to be a learning curve. We are still learning to use the internet and social media in a more responsible way. That has taken several decades. And I think for generative AI as well, the learning curve is going to be slow. And we see these new technical systems coming out on a timescale that is perhaps too fast for people to adapt to. And if that accelerates further, I think that's going to be a real problem. And we need to think about digital literacy in a different way. And learning how to better make use of digital systems has to be a bigger part of how we spend our time online. It can't be just a passive matter of taking the path of least resistance. That is going to become more and more problematic.
I must ask you, Professor Arvind, is it really possible to regulate AI? And what's your take on how regulation around the world seems to be panning out?
I do think it's possible to regulate AI, and to think about that, we should remember that AI is not just one thing. There are many kinds of AI. We have talked about generative AI and predictive AI. There's also the AI that generates our social media feeds, for instance, and has been blamed for many kinds of problems like increasing polarization, enabling people to use social media to sort of fan the flames of sectarian violence, because these AI systems sometimes amplify the most divisive posts that are being shared online. There is the AI behind self-driving cars, for instance. So there are many kinds of AI. And when we think about all of these separately, and when we think about regulation separately, I think that becomes a much more tractable problem than just asking, how can we do AI regulation? So when we look at self-driving cars as just as one example, that's already very heavily regulated, right? In many parts of the world. AI used in banking is very heavily regulated because it's not even specific to AI, simply because banking is heavily regulated. High frequency trading is heavily regulated. And so I think the best way to think about AI regulation is not to focus on the AI part, but instead to focus on what are the harms we're concerned about, and to have regulation that mitigates the risk of those harms, whether or not AI is being used. And that is the style of AI regulation that I'm most optimistic about.
There's been a lot of conversation recently about artificial general intelligence, which is pretty much the definition says it's going to be smarter than the AI that we already use. Do you think AGI as a technology is ready for the real world, and are we as humans are ready to accept it amongst us?
I think AGI is many, many years away, possibly decades away. It's hard to predict exactly what the timeline will be, but we have thought deeply about where AI technology is now and what is required to reach AGI, which to me, I think of it as something like an AI system that's capable of automating most of the tasks that people do in the economy today. And of course, if AGI were built, it would be completely transformative for society and for every country's economy. However, there are just very serious limitations in today's AI systems for which we don't really have good ideas on how to overcome them. It's going to require scientific breakthroughs. It's going to require multiple scientific breakthroughs. Here is just one simple example. When we talk about the generative AI systems behind chatbots, they are trained from text on the web, and then there is a little bit of a post-training step. But after that, when they're chatting with users, there's no learning going on. And this is something that people often have misconceptions about. So it is true that AI companies want our data and they are trying to train AI systems using that data, but that learning is not happening in an ongoing, flexible way, in the way that any person, even a child, can learn as we interact with the world around us. So that's a big difference between current AI and human intelligence. It's kind of static. It happens during this massive training process that goes on in data centers, as opposed to in everyday conversations. So that means that the flexibility of AI today is very limited. I can list a bunch of other limitations, but we need new technical ideas to overcome these limitations before we get anywhere close to AGI or artificial general intelligence.
In a broader perspective, is it worrying that we are so willing to cede control to technology?
I think we should be very careful. I think at every stage we should ask what is the right amount of control that we want to cede, if you will, to technology. And when we look at the past, we have had to make those careful decisions in every domain. So in aviation, for instance, right, we have autopilot. Autopilot is a very successful technology, but it's only very successful because, A, we have acknowledged that in normal situations, autopilot can largely do better than human pilots. But we also know that in some exceptional situations, autopilot doesn't have the kind of common sense, flexible thinking that is required to recover from difficult situations that might be encountered during flight. And so we've had to develop rules for when it's okay to use autopilot and when the human pilots need to take back control. So we need to go through that kind of exercise in every single domain in which we are putting AI into operation. And if we don't, then we are risking potentially catastrophic failures.
At this point, I would like to inform our viewers that Professor Arvind has been closely tracking what tracks us on the internet, the World Wide Web as we know it. In a paper a few years ago, you wrote about the long tail of tracking. So how much of a soup do we find ourselves in now with, as consumers, with how much we're allowing ourselves to be tracked on the internet? And is there really any escape from this now?
So this is happening primarily because of the online advertising industry. When we use apps on our phone, when we browse websites on our computers, we might think that we're interacting with a particular app or with a particular website, but hidden behind that app or website are sometimes dozens of other companies that are essentially making notes of everything that we do online, and this is being used to tailor ads to us and for various other commercial purposes. Yes, the state of affairs is pretty bad. So we've also looked at, in some other research, we've looked at smart TVs, for instance. So TVs are now essentially becoming just like computers or phones, and so everything we might do on these smart TVs is also being tracked, and then that is being linked to what we do on our mobile phones and other personal devices. However, I think in the last few years, there have actually been some improvements, both improvements in terms of regulation and improvements in terms of technology. So for instance, browsers now have anti-tracking features. Apple, for instance, has an ability to opt out, allow consumers to opt out of app tracking. And I do think we should make use of these features. If we take a few minutes to change our privacy settings, we can make a big difference to the amount, the extent to which we're tracked online. Every app that we use has a privacy setting screen. And I like to, maybe just take a few minutes a week when I'm using my apps to go in there and see if all the settings are what I'm comfortable with. So I think we do have a lot of control over the situation, and we should take advantage of that.
In fact, you mentioned the measures that Apple has implemented recently, and from my personal experience, I can kind of verify that a lot of social media platforms now don't have that recent information that probably Safari has cordoned off very nicely. They're still relying on much older information that they have for targeted ads. But in your what's your take in terms of all the claims that big tech companies are making that, fine, we are fighting against users being tracked online? Is it enough, and what else do they need to do?
I think the actions by companies are not going to be enough. So we're seeing an interesting Silicon Valley versus Silicon Valley dynamic. When a company like Apple, for instance, as the device maker, they want to track our activities as much as possible, but they will try to prevent websites or apps from tracking us through Safari or through the iOS app tracking transparency feature. And so this is an interesting contradiction, if you will, but you can understand what is going on. I think there is both a competitive aspect to Apple's behavior and to the behavior of other companies. They want to do as much tracking by themselves. They don't want other companies to track as much. But also, I do think it does genuinely improve privacy. That's certainly not going to be enough. We need to keep the pressure up on companies. As individuals, we can take a lot of steps, and I think we should also keep pushing for regulation on this.
You spoke about regulation. What sort of regulations would actually be able to counter what we're currently facing?
So let's talk about maybe privacy regulation as well as AI regulation a little bit. So one style of regulation is to give individuals more control. I think this is, somewhat valuable. So, for instance, in the European Union, the GDPR does many things, the General Data Protection Regulation, but one of those is to incentivize companies, allow users to opt out of cookies. And in fact, there's EU regulation even before the GDPR that had that effect. So you can see both the advantages and the limitations of that. A lot of consumers, perceive it as an annoyance more than a helpful thing that you have all these cookie pop-ups all the time. So putting control in the hands of individuals is not the end of the story. I think regulations like the GDPR also have other aspects, more systemic aspects, where they require companies to do certain data protection assessments before putting technologies into action. So that's a different style of regulation. And maybe a third style of regulation is just to set some minimum standards for companies and to say, this is the floor. So this type of data should not be collected at all, maybe biometric data, right? So that is a very high risk kind of data. And so that's not a matter of consumers opting out. No company should be able to do this. So those are various different kinds of regulation. I think we are seeing a mix of those all around the world. And when it comes to AI regulation as well as privacy regulation, I think a lot of what is required is just better enforcement. A lot of the time, companies might make promises like, oh, our AI is not discriminatory, or our products are privacy protecting, but then when you actually look at what's happening, that's not true. So that's simply, a false claim that the company has made in the market. So I think regulators can enforce truth in advertising law. So that is a way to help the situation that doesn't even necessarily require new regulation.
And thank you so much, Professor Arvind, for joining us.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation.
We've saved one of our best sessions for the last. It's a privilege to welcome three extraordinary athletes who have brought immense pride to India through their unparalleled dedication, skill, and passion. Today, we are honored to have with us PR Sreejesh, Sumit Antil, and Swapnil Kusale, three champions who have excelled on the global stage, inspiring countless Indians with their remarkable journeys and accomplishments. Each of these athletes have shown us what it means to represent India. It's over to HT Sports Editor Ashish Magotra.
Hello and welcome to the 2024 session of the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit, a session that is all the more special because it is the 100th anniversary of Hindustan Times. And on this occasion, we have with us three stalwarts of Indian sport, three athletes who won medals at the Olympics. We start off with PR Sreejesh, a legend in Indian hockey and also the winner of 2 bronze medals, including one at the Paris 2024 Olympics. We also have Sumit Antil with us, 2 back-to-back gold medals in the javelin in the Paralympics. And we also have Swapnil Kusale with us, who broke new ground by winning a medal in the 50-meter 3 positions, one of the toughest events in shooting. Thank you all for being with us. And before I really get into the nitty-gritties of their journey to the top, I will ask PR Sreejesh, how did he come up with that celebration? How do you decide that you're going to climb to the top of the goal and celebrate a medal? How does that go?
Thank you very much for having me here, first of all. And that iconic moment, I don't know how I celebrated that, because, in Tokyo, what happened is like our third bronze medal match was in the early morning. So after the match, we had enough time to celebrate on the field. And as you know, that it was a COVID time, so there were no spectators, and the stadium was free. Then I thought of, okay, it can be my last tournament, and I just wanted to enjoy my my medal with my way. So I tried to climb on the goalpost once before during a training session, and I succeeded. Then I thought, okay, this is going to be good for me, and that's how I climbed on the goalpost. And I never thought that picture goes so viral. It's I know it's nowadays it's become a phase for hockey, but that was a fantastic moment for me, and I thought, okay, that's a way I wanted to end up my career. When I sat on that goalpost, I was just feeling like all the emotions, all the journey, it just came in front of my eyes, and I just enjoyed it. So that moment just pushed me to climb on that goalpost.
Indeed. And Sreejesh, just talk to me about, how does a boy from, Kerala find so much success on the hockey field? Kerala has always been known for its football, for its athletics. How did you sort of get into hockey? How did that journey sort of begin for you?
It's a destiny. That's what I call always, because Kerala, as you mentioned, Kerala is quite familiar for football, athletics, and even volleyball. But my journey started from GV Raja Sports School, where I joined as an athlete. So I used to be a shot putter during that time. I was fatty, I was short. Then when it comes to the competitive sports, I was not a perfect sports person, just a kid, 12-year-old kid who just took his baby steps into sports, joined a sports school. Then it was not a place where I feel like comfortable. Kids always wanted to be in a comfort zone. Athletics is a place where every second day there used to be a new champion. And when I found that, okay, I doesn't have any future in athletics, I tried to fix into some other place. I tried football, I tried volleyball, I tried basketball. Then I at last I ended up in hockey. And the reason behind hockey is like a grace mark. In Kerala, if you represented your state in a nationals, you will get 60 marks in the board exam. So that was my first motto to get into hockey. Then again, there is another question mark: is why goalkeeping? Goalkeeping is because I was, as I mentioned, I was fatty, I was short. Then I thought, I'm a person doesn't like to run a lot, and I'm a person who doesn't want to work hard. So that's how I ended up in goalkeeping, and the rest, that how become. And it's become like a dream journey for me so far.
Indeed. Nobody will believe that you don't like to work hard now. We've seen you in the goal, how you're shouting at defenders, how you're totally telling everybody to be on their toes all the time. So I don't think
That's a
anybody
demand.
will ever
That's a
believe
demand.
that you don't like to work hard.
No, that's the demand of situations, because once you started to play the game and when you are getting into that serious note, definitely you started to push yourself hard to become the best, because there is no place for a second person in the team. Goalkeepers are like there used to be two goalkeepers, but in Olympics there is only one spot for the goalkeeper, irrespective of your age, irrespective of anything. Your performance matters a lot. So for the performance, you need to work harder and harder than anyone else.
Right. So, Sumit, can you आप अपनी जर्नी के बारे में कुछ बता सकते हैं हमें कि आपने कैसे ये स्टार्ट किया और आपने किस टाइम पे डिसाइड किया कि ये ही स्पोर्ट आपके लिए है?
मैं बचपन से रेसलिंग करता था सर, कि जिस एरिया से मैं आता हूँ सोनीपत में, वहाँ पे हर घर में रेसलिंग करते हैं। मतलब एक स्पोर्टिंग कल्चर है कि रेसलिंग को बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ावा है। तो मैंने भी स्टार्टिंग रेसलिंग से ही की थी। लगभग 8 साल मैंने रेसलिंग की है। इतनी अच्छी स्टेज पे नहीं, बट जब इनिशियल स्टेज होती है किसी भी एथलीट की। उसके बाद में फिर एक्सीडेंट हो गया 2015 में, और 2 साल फिर मन में ये आ गया कि थोड़ा पढ़ लिख लेते हैं और कहीं पे जॉब लग जाएगी और लाइफ थोड़ा स्टेबल हो जाएगी। बट जल्दी मेरे को समझ में आ गया था कि मैं कर ही नहीं सकता 9 to 5 जॉब, मेरे बस की नहीं है, और मेरे को वापस से स्पोर्ट्स में जाना है। तो एक पैरा एथलीट है हमारे गांव में, राजकुमार हुड्डा भाई साहब, उन्होंने मेरे को बताया कि ऐसे ऐसे पैरा गेम्स होते हैं, और अ, आपने इतने साल लगातार रेसलिंग की है तो उसका फायदा आपको हो सकता है कि वहां पे मिले। तो जब मैं ग्राउंड पे गया पैरा स्पोर्ट्स के बारे में रिसर्च करने, तो जेवलिन एक ऐसा स्पोर्ट्स था सर जो कोई भी इंसान देखता है तो बहुत अच्छा लगता है उसे स्टार्टिंग में करते हुए। और जिस तरह से सीनियर एथलीट्स वहां पे थ्रो कर रहे थे, तो तभी मन में हुआ कि हाँ, यही गेम करना है। और एक अलग सी अटैचमेंट सी फील हुई कि हाँ, जिस तरह से वो ट्रेवल करता है, काफी दूर तक ट्रेवल करता है, तो काफी अच्छा लगता है। तो थोड़ा फैसिनेटिंग सा होता है कि मैं भी इतनी दूर फेंकूंगा, और वो जो फील होती है जब ज्यादा डिस्टेंस ट्रेवल करता है, तो वो एक अट्रैक्ट की थी उस टाइम पे जब सीनियर्स थ्रो कर रहे थे। तो ऐसे ही जेवलिन में घुस गए कि मेरे को यही स्पोर्ट्स करना है। और बट बाद में पता चला कि ऐसे ही ट्रेवल नहीं करती, बहुत ज्यादा टेक्निक, बहुत ज्यादा मेहनत लगती है इसके पीछे। तो ऐसे ही जेवलिन की स्टार्ट हुई थी सर मेरे कैरियर में।
मगर वैसे आपको ज्यादा टाइम नहीं लगा ये मास्टर करने में, अगर देखा जाए तो टोक्यो में तो रिकॉर्ड के बाद, वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड के बाद रिकॉर्ड टूट रहा था हर थ्रो में।
बिल्कुल सर, जैसे सभी को ये लगता है कि बहुत कम टाइम लगा है, बट जो 8 साल मैंने रेसलिंग की थी, जो हर एक एथलीट की इनिशियल स्टेज होती है किसी भी गेम में, आई थिंक उसका बहुत ज्यादा फायदा मिला है। क्योंकि एक एज एन एलाइट एथलीट की स्ट्रेंथ और जो खासियत बोल सकते हैं कि जो एलाइट एथलीट्स की, वो थोड़ी थोड़ी मेरे में आने लग गई थी रेसलिंग करते करते। तो जिस तरह से मैं जेवलिन पे शिफ्ट हुआ, तो जो स्ट्रेंथ थी, जो मसल्स में मास्टरी थी, वो कहीं ना कहीं मेरे को काफी काम आई। और सोच भी बोल सकते हैं कि जैसे शुरू में ही वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड की सोची थी कि हाँ, एक दिन वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड ब्रेक करना है, तो टारगेट वही था। उससे जो नीचे की स्टेजेस थी उन पे कभी ध्यान ही नहीं गया सर।
तो स्वप्निल, आपकी भी सोच ऐसे ही थी? आपने भी जब शूटिंग में डिसाइड किया कि मैंने 50 मीटर 3 पोजीशन करना है, क्या आपने भी सोचा था कि एक दिन जाके मुझे मेडल जीतना है, या पहले आपने सोचा था बस पार्ट लेके देखते हैं, हाउ विल इट गो, लेट्स हैव अ लुक?
जैसे कि शूटिंग स्टार्ट हुआ 2009 से, बट उसके बाद जैसे कि शूटिंग एक पैशन करके था मेरे लिए, कोई ऐसा नहीं था कि शूटिंग करना ही है आगे जाके, बट अच्छा लग रहा था इसलिए स्टार्ट किया था। लेकिन बाद में जाके पता चला कि शूटिंग या कुछ स्पोर्ट्स में ओलंपिक लेवल का मेडल लेना एक बड़ी बात होती है। तो उसके बाद फिर उसमें इंटरेस्ट ज़्यादा बढ़ने लगा, एंड देन आई स्टार्टेड प्रोफेशनल अच्छे से उसमें और ज़्यादा अच्छा करने के लिए।
तो स्वप्निल, आपने लाइक 50 मीटर थ्री पोजीशन क्यों चुना? क्योंकि अगर आप महाराष्ट्र के भी शूटर्स देखें, पहले तो काफी 10 मीटर एयर राइफल में सक्सेस पाया गया था, पिस्टल में था सक्सेस, बट 50 मीटर थ्री पोजीशन इंडिया के लिए काफी टफ इवेंट रहा है और ज्यादा मेडल नहीं आए उसमें।
तो ऐसा है कि 50 मीटर में बहुत सारे चैलेंजेस हैं और थोड़ा सा टफ होता है अलग से पिस्टल या राइफल से, थोड़ा सा एयर राइफल के कंपेयर टू करने से, कि उसमें चैलेंज ऐसे होते हैं कि विंड चैलेंज होता है या वेदर का होता है, लाइट चैलेंजेस, और जहाँ पे प्रेजेंट होता है हमारा ओपन होता है पूरा शूटिंग रेंज पूरा, तो बहुत सारे चैलेंजेस होती है, तो सीखने के लिए बहुत कुछ मिलता है उसमें से। तो इसके लिए वो काफ़ी बढ़िया लगने लगा था 50 मीटर रेंज, और उसमें जो बुलेट्स होती है वो ओरिजिनल होती है बेसिकली। सो वो भी और अच्छा थोड़ा सा लगता है कि जब हम रियल बुलेट्स यूज़ करते तभी, तो उसमें ज़्यादा फोकस होने लगा था और ज़्यादा ही उसमें इंटरेस्ट बढ़ने लगा था।
I'm just going to move to Sreejesh now. Sreejesh, one of the things that, I've always wanted to ask you, you've been in Indian hockey for such a long period. At the start, Indian hockey wasn't in a good place. We were struggling to even get into the Olympics. Our world ranking wasn't great. We weren't on par with, European teams. What was the feeling that you had then, and how has it sort of changed over the years?
So when you look into the history, we had a rich history when we used to play on the grass ground. And later when the Europeans introduced the AstroTurf, that's the time in the downfall of Indian hockey started. It's not because we didn't have good players. It's because of the surface was really tough to, adjust, and lack of fields in India because it's too expensive for us to, maintain. And that was the way. That's why it becomes really tough for us to come into the top. And second thing is like exposure, European exposure or any other international exposure. Before the initial time of 2000, 2010, we never got that kind of, foreign exposure. So that was the second reason why we were not in top levels. But the best part I should say is that when the Europeans introduced this AstroTurf, they brought up a lot of techniques. It's more about physicality, it's more about technique, it's about tactics. It's not about the skill. The game is not anymore with the skill. It's changed. The entire game's changed a lot. And the changes happens after when we got our first European coach, Jose Brasa. He joined us in 2008. After that, he introduced us into the European style of hockey, how we need to play. On a different kind, new method, latest technology. We used to get video analysts into the team. So. And gradually we started to develop. We started to adapt the new style. We learned the basics. Again, we try to apply it on. And after the European coaches comes, they used to talk with the European coaches again, or the coaches with Australia. We used to travel a lot. We used to play more test matches. So when we started to get more international exposure, then we realized that okay, we are capable to beat any team on a given day. And I should say this is like Hockey India League also, played a wonderful role to develop hockey in India, because when you play alongside with, the top player, international top players, or when you are playing against them in front of a huge crowd, that's also helped us to, develop or mature as a, international level player. So over the period, the players' mentality changed a lot. Before, everyone was thinking like, I just want to be part of the national team. Now people always started to dream about, I want to not only become a part of the Indian team, I want to go to an Olympics and win a gold medal. So the thinking mentality changed over a period, and I think I definitely took almost 10 to 15 years to achieve this.
I think, people think it's 10 to 15 years, but somebody might even say just only 10 to 15 years, because it is actually a hard journey, because you've got to teach people from the junior level. You can't just teach the seniors and forget the juniors. But Sumit, one thing I wanted to ask you, like in many other sports, India has chased the top guys. You are, on the other hand, being chased by all the other javelin throwers around the world. What is your mentality like? How do you sort of aim to keep staying on the top?
देखिए सर, जो मेरा मानना वो है कि एक बार टॉप पे पहुंचना बहुत आसान होता है, बट टॉप पे बना रहना वाकई में बहुत मुश्किल होता है। हर चीज आपको एहसास दिलाती है कि आपको टॉप पे बने रहना है। हर चीज आपको एक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी फील करवाती है, चाहे वो आपके बारे में आर्टिकल्स पढ़ लो या जिस तरह से लोग मतलब आपके आसपास सराउंडिंग्स बातें करती हैं, वो कह लो। तो उसके लिए आपको आई थिंक एज अ जब हम ग्राउंड पे होते हैं तो इस तरह से तैयारी करते हैं कि हम कुछ भी नहीं है, मतलब अभी हमें बहुत कुछ अचीव करना है। बट जब मैं अपनी पर्सनली बता रहा हूँ, जब मैं ग्राउंड पे उतरता हूँ तो फिर आई जस्ट फील कि मैं सबसे बेस्ट एथलीट हूँ, और आई जस्ट वांट टू compete विद माई सेल्फ, और आज मेरा दिन है। बट ये फीलिंग ग्राउंड पे कभी नहीं आती जब मैं ग्राउंड पे ट्रेनिंग कर रहा होता हूँ, जब मैं सबसे फील कर रहा हूँ कि अभी मेरे को बहुत ऊपर जाना है। तो ये डिपेंड करता है सर मेंटेलिटी पे, कि एथलीट की किस टाइप की मेंटेलिटी है, उसकी सराउंडिंग्स कैसी है, पॉजिटिव है, नेगेटिव है। क्योंकि सराउंडिंग्स बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करती है। मैंने तो अपनी लाइफ से यही जाना है कि जिस तरह की आपकी सराउंडिंग्स होंगी, आपकी सोच भी वैसी ही हो जाएगी। तो कोशिश करनी चाहिए कि अपनी सराउंडिंग्स को जितना पॉजिटिव रखें। जो मेरी सराउंडिंग्स है वो कभी भी मेरे को एज ए ओलंपिक चैंपियन, पैरालंपिक चैंपियन एंड कभी भी एहसास नहीं दिलाती कि आप वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड होल्डर हो। दे जस्ट ट्रीट मी लाइक एज ए नॉर्मल एथलीट। तो वो एक ऐसी चीज होती है कि बहुत कम मिलती है देखने को। तो ट्रेनिंग पे वही रहता है कि अभी अपना बेस्ट देना है। जब कुछ भी नहीं था हमारे पास में, जब फैसिलिटीज नहीं थी, तब हमने इतना अच्छा परफॉर्म किया है। तो जब आज हर चीज है हमारे पास में अच्छा कोच है, अच्छी फैसिलिटीज है, अच्छा सपोर्ट स्टाफ है, तो हमारी भी कुछ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी बनती है सर कि हम अपना बेस्ट निकाल के लेके सामने आए।
स्वप्निल, ये जो अभी सुमित सराउंडिंग्स की बात कर रहे हैं, मैंने सुना है कि कोल्हापुर में देयर इज क्वाइट अ गुड स्पोर्टिंग कल्चर इवन एट द डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल, यू नो, डज समथिंग लाइक दैट सॉर्ट ऑफ हेल्प यू? डिड इट हेल्प यू गेट इनटू शूटिंग इन द फर्स्ट प्लेस?
जैसे कि मेरे सराउंडिंग एक तो कोच है मेरे दीपाली मैम, जो ओलंपिक है, खेल चुके हैं। और उसके बाद मेरे भैया भी है जो वर्ल्ड कप खेल चुके हैं, बहुत सारे इंटरनेशनल कॉम्पिटिशन खेल चुके हैं। एंड अनदर की तेजस्वी सिंह सावंत, जो ओलंपिक भी खेल चुके हैं। तो सराउंडिंग मैटर करता है, क्योंकि एक्सपीरियंस जो उन लोगों का रहता है, वो एक्सपीरियंस हमें वो सिखाते हैं, बताते हैं कि कैसे किस लेवल पे जाने के बाद हमें किस किस चीज़ से टैकल करना पड़ेगा या किस चीज़ों से इग्नोर करना पड़ेगा। तो सराउंडिंग तो मैटर करती है ट्रेनिंग के टाइम पे, और उनका एक्सपीरियंस भी मैटर करता है उस टाइम।
There is one question I want to ask everybody, that in India what we essentially have is we have pockets where we are good in certain sports. But for India to truly become a sporting nation, do you feel that each sport needs to sort of find its way out of that pocket? And how do we sort of do that?
No, I always believe that, you just need to find out talents from the very, very, very start beginning, in a small age, and we need to categorize players. It's I mean, somewhere we can copy or we can follow China, because how they test the genes, how they categorize their kids into different sports. Because if they find out that the kid is going to grow more than 6 feet or 6.5 feet, they're pushing them to play some volleyball or basketball. Or if they are small, they need to guide them into some other sport. So that's one of the things. Second thing is like, we can say is that the regional wise. So as I mentioned, Kerala is quite familiar for football. So the agility what the players get it, having in Kerala, it's totally different than any other part. Or in the Goa, they used to play, or in Bengal, they used to play more football. And when it comes to hockey, Punjab is a hub for hockey. And when it comes to Odisha, nowadays Odisha also coming to sport. So there we can focus into the region where there, which sports is familiar there, and we can push there, we can facilitate them there. That's one of the things. Second thing is the education, because we need to start this sporting culture from the school level, and to the families. That's one thing I always feel like we are lacking a lot, because I never seen my parents doing any sporting activity. So it's quite hard for me to start from the scratches. So we need to educate the family that sports is not a bad thing. Sport is good. You can have a very good future in sport. There are a lot of other part of the sport also. Let's like, if you want to do a job in sport, there starts from masseur, video analyst, physiotherapist, sports doctors, nutritionists, psychologists, coaches, video analysts, assistant coaches. So there are a lot of career where you can which you can pick up from sport. So once the parents understand that, then definitely they will push their kids to play sport, because everyone do have a different mentality. Like if you go to sport, then your educational career goes down, or your future is it's not in the right track. So that is, I mean, one thing which is really important. We need to introduce kids into different sport, not only one sport. I'm not saying that every kid should play hockey. No, we need to give them option. This should be like a buffet system. Kids go with a play to every sports. They try it. If they like it, they continue it. If they don't like it, change to the next
Just
one. So
as it was for you.
yes,
You also
exactly.
tried a lot of different sports before you settled on hockey.
Yes. So once they started to get an interest in that sport, then we feed them with the basic scientific training methods. So by the time once they're in 18 or 20 or 22, they are capable to play. And most important thing I always mention this is the mind. The mental health of the players, and we need to make sure that these players are dreaming about winning a medal. It's not dreaming about playing for our country. Dreaming about winning a medal for our country is more important. So we need to feed, or we need to see that dream into their mind from the childhood when they start the sport.
And Swapnil, when we talk about dreaming to win a medal, ambition is something that has been very high in the shooting contingent for a long time. But at the last Olympics, we didn't quite get the success we needed. How strong is this ambition in the shooting contingent in you? How much do you actually think about wanting to win gold medals, not just wanting to compete?
जैसे कि शूटिंग में ऐसा है कि हर एक मतलब लेवल पे एथलीट चेंज होते रहते हैं और उनका परफॉर्मेंस चेंज होता है। यूथ भी आके सीनियर्स में खेलते हैं, उनका परफॉर्मेंस काफ़ी हाई होता है। तो इसमें मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जैसे कि हर एक स्पोर्ट्स में फिजिकल एक्टिविटी जितना मैटर करता है, उतना ही शूटिंग में भी करता है। अगर फिजिकल फिटनेस आपका अच्छा हो और काफ़ी बढ़िया से हर एक चीज़ पे मसल्स पे वर्क करते हैं, तो आई थिंक शूटिंग में भी काफ़ी मेडल आ सकते हो और ज़्यादा। और आई थिंक अभी भी ज़्यादा, जैसे कि लास्ट टाइम से काफ़ी सालों से शूटिंग के जो एथलीट्स हैं काफ़ी जो वो उनके टेक्निकल के वजह जैसे कि फिजिकल फिटनेस पे ज़्यादा ध्यान दे रहे, ताकि आप देख सकते हैं कि दूसरे कॉम्पिटिशन्स होते हैं जैसे कि वर्ल्ड चैम्पियनशिप या वर्ल्ड कप इसमें, तो काफ़ी मेडल्स भी उसमें आ रहे, ताकि क्योंकि उनका फोकस जो है का पूरा फिजिकल फिटनेस पे जा रहा है। तो आई थिंक नेक्स्ट ओलंपिक्स में भी ज़्यादा मेडल्स आ सकते हैं।
मैं जब काफी एथलीट से बात करता हूँ, वो बोलते हैं कि एक बड़ा डिफरेंस इंडियन और बाहर के एथलीट्स में ये है कि वो डेटा कैसे स्टडी करते हैं, टेक्नोलॉजी का क्या यूज करते हैं। डू यू फील दैट इज स्टिल अ बिट ऑफ अ डिफरेंशिएटर, और डू यू फील most Indian athletes have caught up on that front, Sreejesh? What do you feel?
Now we are in an advanced stage. I mean, I know we are running. I mean, alongside with these Europeans, we do. I mean, I don't know about the other sports, but at least in hockey, we are using the latest software which to analyze the game, and we are using a GPS tracker where we can find out how much, I mean, what effort these players are putting in each match, and during the training session, how many kilometers they ran, and how intense their training session was. What was their heart rate, how distance, I mean, how much distance they covered in a short time. So we are managing that, but the I mean, I always feel like it's not on the elite level what we are lacking. We are lacking in the grassroots level, because we are the most popular country in this world. Then still we are struggling to find out the talents for the top. That's because our grassroots system is not up to that mark. It's not only the talent, because in every countries the kids under 18 or under 16 are the same. They're fresh, they're just like a fresh clay. You can mold them into any shape, but are we capable, or are we equipped enough with the coaches who can find out them, from the talents from the grassroots? That is really important. So in the top level, in the senior Indian team, wherever you go, in the tops or the side, the Olympics podium scheme, everything, that's all are well equipped. People can go abroad, they can train. But when it comes to the grassroots level, from where we need to find out the real talent for the future, we are lacking there. So we need to give more attention to there. If you go into any other countries like Australia or Europeans, half of our population people are, getting more medals. Why? Because their grassroots system is really well, and they do have a very well track for a player, for a kid to, go through and reach into the Olympics podium.
But Sumit, Sreejesh जिस चीज की बात कर रहे हैं, at one point it is correct, but at the same point you also see कि हमारे जब जूनियर वर्ल्ड चैंपियनशिप्स होते हैं, या जूनियर शूटिंग के इवेंट्स होते हैं, हमें बहुत मेडल्स मिलते हैं, बट ये सीनियर लेवल में आपको क्या लगता है क्यों ट्रांसलेट नहीं होते?
बिल्कुल सर, जैसे श्रीजेश भाई ने बताया कि जूनियर लेवल पे हर एक कंट्री का जो डाटा स्टैट्स होते हैं, मेडल हम ज्यादा ले पाते हैं एज कम्पेयर टू सीनियर लेवल। आई थिंक हम जिस तरह से टैलेंट को शेप करते हैं उसके बाद में, तो वो एक बहुत ही मेजर रोल प्ले करता है। अभी जैसे जैसे नई टेक्निक्स, नए नए इक्विपमेंट्स इंडिया में इंट्रोड्यूस हो रहे हैं, तो बढ़ रहे हैं, तो टाइम लगेगा सर उसको बढ़ने में। और जैसे पहले हम स्ट्रगल कर रहे थे कि जैसे मेंटलिटी भी अभी इंक्रीज हो रही है सर। जैसे मैं बात करूं 2010 की, तो एज एन ओलंपियन होना भी एक बहुत ही गर्व की बात होती थी किसी भी एथलीट के लिए। हम भी जैसे स्टेडियम में जाते थे, मैं उस टाइम पे रेसलिंग करता था, तो कोई भी जस्ट जिसने ओलंपिक में compete किया है, तो वो एथलीट भी दिख जाता था, तो हमें वो होता था कि भाई ओलंपियन एथलीट है। बट आज हर एक एथलीट जो भी इतनी बड़ी स्टेज पे compete कर रहा है, वो एक ही मेंटेलिटी के साथ में जाता है कि मेरे को देश के लिए मेडल लेके आना है, और मोस्टली गोल्ड मेडल लेके आना है। तो जैसे जैसे एथलीट्स की मेंटेलिटी ऊपर जा रही है सर, तो हमें उसका रिजल्ट भी देखने को मिल रहा है। बट बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जिन पर हमें वर्क करना है, जो इक्विपमेंट रिलेटेड होगी, कोचेज की ट्रेनिंग रिलेटेड होगी, कि कोचेज को थोड़ा फॉरेन एक्सपोजर मिले, और उनको नई नई टेक्निक्स और नए नए जो तरीके होते हैं परफॉर्मेंस एनहांस करने के, वो उनको सीखने को मिले। तो आई थिंक ये एक वो हो सकता है सर कि जो आने वाले जो ओलंपिक्स एंड पैरालंपिक्स है, उसमें मेडल टैली को ऊपर लेके जाए इंडिया की।
स्वप्निल, मैं आपसे एक बात पूछना चाहूंगा कि इस बार हमारे ओलंपिक्स में बहुत सारे फोर्थ प्लेस फिनिशेस आए, तो आपको क्या लगता है दैट व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन विनिंग अ मेडल एंड just being a little out of it? Is there something that has to be done at a mental level? Is that what the difference is? Is it a technical thing? Is it how you deal with pressure? What do you feel is the difference between getting a medal and just finishing out of it?
Obviously it's because of mindset only, क्योंकि इस लेवल पे जाने के बाद वहाँ पे माइंडसेट कैसे रखना है, थोड़ा सा और ज़्यादा कॉन्फिडेंटली खेलना पड़ेगा, ये पहले समझ में आना चाहिए। और आई थिंक बहुत लोगों को वो आ भी गया है कि कैसे उस लेवल पे जाने के बाद खेलना ज़रूरी होता है, माइंडसेट कैसे रखना पड़ता है। नॉट ओनली वहाँ पे फाइनल के टाइम पे ही, लेकिन उसके पहले जैसे कॉम्पिटिशन हम खेलते हैं, क्वालिफिकेशन खेलते हैं, तो वहाँ पे भी माइंडसेट अलग होता है, फाइनल का भी अलग होता है। तो मोस्ट ऑफ द एथलीट्स जो फोर्थ आए हैं, तो आई थिंक दे हैव डन रियली गुड इस टाइम पे, एंड आई थिंक आई एम श्योर कि नेक्स्ट टाइम पे और ज्यादा वो मेंटली ज्यादा प्रिपेयर होकर वहां पे परफॉर्म करेंगे।
I'm just going to shift into a slightly bigger space, because when we talk about ambition, we obviously talk about what the country also wants to do, and one of the things that India wants to do is they want to try and host the 2036 Olympics. Now there are two aspects, two main parts of this dream. One is having the right kind of infrastructure to sustain that dream, to help athletes get there. But the second, even more important part is the athletes themselves, because you can't host the Olympics without the athletes to win medals. After all, the host nation needs to do well at the Olympics. So Sreejesh, how do you see India sort of get its athletes ready, get the right kind of infrastructure for this kind of journey now, which is about to sort of begin, because India has already sent a letter of intent to the IOC?
So I believe that financially or any technical wise, we are capable to host an international event like Olympics. But the question comes like how it's going to be, how it's going to benefit our athlete. How many medals are we going to win? Are we capable to participate in each event? That's are the question marks which raise, because that we do participate in certain events in a better way, like athletics. Nowadays we are dreaming about winning more medals, individual medals. Hockey is one of the event where we expect. Shooting is one of the area where we're really good at. Wrestling is one of the areas. Boxing is coming up with that good in performance. Badminton. There are games, but what about gymnastic, which contains more medals? So what about swimming, which having more events and more medals? So it's about, are we focusing into those areas where we can fulfill? Our Olympic journey. Okay, even if we are hosting 2036 Olympics, how many medals are we expecting? Are we covering these areas? Because hosting a Olympic Games, I think it's really easy for us now, but winning a medal is going to be it's still a tougher task for us. So I believe that we need to think about this aspect before we are just stepping into hosting the Olympic Games, because even we are hosting an Olympic Games and still we are struggling to get into a double digit, then it's going to be real tough. And definitely, that playing Olympics itself a great pressure. These two guys definitely know about that, because Olympics एक नाम के साथ एक बहुत बड़ा प्रेशर भी आता है. Then definitely you imagine how it's going to play an Olympics in front of your own people. तो उसके लिए तो we got another 12 years definitely, but still उसके लिए तो आपको बहुत ज़्यादा काम करना पड़ेगा, and definitely you just need to dream bigger to achieve that.
And Sreejesh, as you said, one of the most important things for this dream is going to be identifying good talent early and molding them so that they have enough time to find success first at international level and then at the major event.
For sure. Because the Olympic journey is not happens from from last 1 year or 4 years. It's starting from your first day of your career. Just सुमित ने जैसे बताया कि एक ड्रीम रहता है कि सबको है मुझे ओलंपिक्स पहुंचना है. नाउ दैट ड्रीम इज चेंजिंग, मुझे ओलंपिक्स गोल्ड मेडल जीतना है. तो वो एक चेंज हम लोग को लेके आना है बच्चे लोगों में. इफ यू वांट टू अनदर 12 years, हम मेरे हिसाब से तो मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द प्लेयर्स वोंट बी देयर टू अचीव दैट. तो बट अभी जो बच्चा लोग है जो 16 हो गया, देन अनदर 12 years, दैट 28, और द किड्स आर 14 years old. We need to feed them. We need to ask them dream about winning a medal in front of our own people. That is going to be really important. And which sports? That's the next question mark. Which sports is important for us? And we just need to focus on the other part also, where there are a lot of medals. And I think, yes, it's a long journey, and every one of us part of that, and we just contribute our best to develop or best to achieve medal in our own soil. That's really important.
And Sumit, when we talk about journeys, India's journey in the Paralympics itself has been quite stunning. In Rio, almost nobody really even knew about Paralympics, to now actually winning the number of medals that we do. It's quite stunning, and it kind of shows how India has really taken to Paralympics and the opportunity it provides.
बिल्कुल सर, जैसे आपने रियो की बात करी, we finished with 4 medals, and in Tokyo we got 19 medals, and in Paris we got 29 medals. तो एथलीट्स काफी मेहनत कर रहे हैं. उसके साथ साथ में जैसे श्रीजेश भाई ने बताया कि एक पॉइंट बहुत जरूरी होता है, एजुकेशन, अवेयरनेस किसी भी स्पोर्ट्स को लेके. जैसे मैं अपनी बात करूं, मेरे को एक्सीडेंट के टाइम पे खुद को नहीं पता था कि पैरा स्पोर्ट्स होता क्या है, और ऐसे उसमें कम्पीट भी किया जा सकता है. व्हाट इज द प्रोसीजर टू कम्पीट इन द पैरा स्पोर्ट्स. तो मेन थिंग वही है सर कि जिस तरह से लोग आजकल एजुकेट हो रहे हैं, सोशल मीडिया जिस तरह से वर्क कर रहा है, आप लोग जिस तरह से लोगों में अवेयरनेस बढ़ा रहे हैं, तो आई थिंक ये एक बहुत बड़ा पॉइंट है. और कोशिश कर रहे हैं एथलीट्स की रो टैलेंट को जल्द से जल्द अब बाहर निकाल के उनको जैसे ट्रेन किया जाए, उनको प्रिपेयर किया जाए इतनी बड़ी स्टेज के लिए. तो जिस तरह से हमारी फेडरेशन वर्क कर रही है, जिस तरह से सरकार जैसे आपने देखा होगा पिछले 8 साल में जिस तरह से सरकार ने पैरा स्पोर्ट्स को काफी बढ़ावा दिया है, इवन हमारे पीएम सर ने खुद इतना इंटरेस्ट दिखा रहे हैं. तो आई थिंक वो एक चीज होती है जो हमारा यूथ है, जो 15-16 साल के जो यंग टैलेंटेड एथलीट्स हैं, उनमें एक मोटिवेशन बढ़ता है कि हाँ, हमें भी पैरालंपिक्स में मेडल लेके आना है. और जब लोगों को पता ही नहीं होगा सर कि पैरा स्पोर्ट्स होता क्या है, तो बढ़ेगा कैसे वो. जब लोगों को धीरे धीरे पता लग रहा है कि हाँ पैरा स्पोर्ट्स होता है और ऐसे ऐसे कम्पीट किया जाता है उसमें, तो जो हमारा यंग टैलेंट है वो निकल के सामने आ रहा है, और उसका फर्क हमें पैरालंपिक्स में देखने को मिल रहा है सर. और जिस तरह से एथलीट्स ट्रेन कर रहे हैं, मेंटलिटी उनकी इतनी हाई हो गई है कि वो कोई भी एथलीट गोल्ड मेडल से नीचे बात ही नहीं करना चाहता. तो फॉर श्योर कि ये बहुत ही पॉजिटिव साइन है हमारे यंग पैरा एथलीट्स में. और जब भी मैं किसी यंग पैरा एथलीट से मिलता हूँ तो बस वही कहता है कि भैया मेरे को भी आपकी तरह गोल्ड मेडल लेके आना और वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड क्रिएट करना है अपने स्पोर्ट्स में. तो ये एक बहुत ही पॉजिटिव साइन है जो हमें आने वाले कुछ वेदर इन LA 2028 और 2032 में देखने को मिलेगा. तो कोशिश करेंगे कि मेडल टैली को और बढ़ाया जाए. बट एक चीज है सर, इफ वी वांटेड टू टॉप द मेडल टैली, तो इंट्रोड्यूस ऑफ द न्यू स्पोर्ट्स बहुत जरूरी है. कि हम कुछ चुनिंदा स्पोर्ट्स में भाग ले रहे हैं, बट स्विमिंग में हमारे मेडल्स नहीं हैं, और जो जिसमें बहुत सारे जेवलिन है सर, एक ही मेडल आ सकता है किसी का गोल्ड, बट जेवलिन स्विमिंग वगैरह में बहुत सारे मेडल्स आ सकते हैं, जो वो स्पोर्ट्स है जो मेडल टैली को ऊपर लेके जाते हैं। तो आई थिंक हम उन स्पोर्ट्स को भी इंट्रोड्यूस करेंगे इंडियन एथलीट्स में, तो ज्यादा अच्छा रहेगा सर। और एक और बात है सर, जैसे हम जाते हैं फॉरेन टूर्नामेंट्स में, श्रीजेश भाई ने, स्वप्निल भाई ने भी ये फील किया होगा कि नंबर ऑफ स्पेक्टेटर्स, जो नंबर ऑफ ऑडियंस में काफी फर्क होता है। जैसे इंडिया में कोई कंपटीशन हो रहा है और फॉरेन में कोई कंपटीशन हो रहा है। जब हम मोस्टली फॉरेन टूर्नामेंट्स में compete करते हैं, तो वहां पे जितने ऑडियंस देखने को आते हैं, तो फॉर श्योर वो अपने यंगर टैलेंट्स को, जो उनका रो टैलेंट्स है, उनको इंट्रोड्यूस करवा रहे हैं स्पोर्ट्स से, और उनको एज अ मोटिवेशन के तौर पे बड़े बड़े जो एलाइट लेवल के एथलीट्स हैं उनको दिखा रहे हैं। बट देयर इज अ बिग क्वेश्चन, क्या क्या हम ऐसा कर रहे हैं? अभी कोई भी नेशनल चैंपियनशिप होती है तो जितने लोग उसे देखने को आते हैं, जितने जो पेरेंट्स हैं, वो अपने बच्चों को कितना दिखाने लेके आते हैं, तो वो एक बहुत बड़ा क्वेश्चन मार्क है सर। हमारे आइडेंटिफाई तभी होगा सर रो टैलेंट, जब वो बाहर आएगा निकल के। उसको कैटेगराइज करना तो बहुत आगे की बात है, बट उसको हम जब इनिशियल स्टेज में मोटिवेट ही नहीं करेंगे, तो फिर वो बाहर कैसे निकल के आएगा? आजकल आप माहौल देख रहे हैं कि हर हर कोई मतलब कंफर्टेबल जोन में रहना चाहता है। कोई हार्ड वर्क की तरफ तो बहुत कम एथलीट्स को देखता हूं मैं जो हार्ड वर्क की तरफ में अग्रसर होते हैं। तो सबसे वो है सर कि जो इंटरेस्ट क्रिएट करना यूथ में स्पोर्ट्स को लेके, तो आई थिंक सबसे मेजर स्टेप है सर वो। और आई थिंक वो होगा तो ऑटोमेटिकली ऊपर वाली चीजें सुधरती आ जाएंगी।
मगर एक एक स्पोर्ट है जिसमें बहुत सारे मेडल्स आ सकते हैं, वो है शूटिंग। और शूटिंग में आई थिंक टैलेंट की कोई कमी नहीं है स्वप्निल। आई थिंक हर नेशनल्स में द नंबर ऑफ पार्टिसिपेंट्स आर इंक्रीजिंग एंड इट इज वेरी वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू गेट इनटू द इंडियन टीम नाउ।
या आई थिंक बिकॉज ऐसा हुआ है कि हर एक कंपटीशन नेशनल चैंपियनशिप में ऑलमोस्ट 1000 अबाव इंक्रीज हो रहे हैं, मतलब एवरी ईयर। तो 5000 के ऊपर राइफल्स में, 6000 अबाव पिस्टल में। तो ऐसे ही वो नंबर्स बढ़ रहे हैं, तो उनको डिस्टर्ब लाइक अलग अलग करना पड़ रहा है। एक वेन्यू पे दोनों का होना काफ़ी मुश्किल होता है। तो राइफल कभी भोपाल में होता है, तो पिस्टल कभी दिल्ली में होता है कॉम्पिटिशन नेशनल चैम्पियनशिप में। तो यंग जो है, जो यूथ होती है शूटर्स एथलीट, तो वो काफ़ी अच्छे से परफॉर्म करके उस लेवल पे, नेशनल लेवल पे। लेकिन उनको उसके बाद का जो ट्रेनिंग होता है इस लेवल आने के बाद, वो शायद से कहीं पे कम मिल रहा है, कम पड़ रहा है शायद से, क्योंकि उनकी जो नॉलेज होती है एक नेशनल टीम में आने के बाद या वहाँ पे पहुँचने के लिए, तो आई थिंक उसके पहले ही थोड़ा सा उनको कम मिलता है। एक लेवल पे वो शूट करते हैं अच्छे से, लेकिन उसके बाद मे बी माइंडसेट थोड़ा चेंज हो जाता है। और आई थिंक मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि उस टाइम पे उनका माइंडसेट थोड़ा चेंज करने के लिए उस टाइप की टेक्निक्स और जो माइंड्स ट्रेनर होते हैं वो उनको प्रोवाइड करना जरूरी है।
One last question that I'm going to ask everybody here is that हम ये बोल रहे हैं कि ये कंट्री को क्या करना चाहिए, बट at a very personal level, you know, how do each one of you want to be a force for good? You know, how do you want to change things at a community level? Because that's very important. You know, when I was speaking to some athletes from outside India, they said their biggest impact is at the community level. That is where they're a force for good. So how do you each one of you want to go ahead and sort of do that?
See, for me, I always believe that sharing your experience with the youngsters is all, I mean, always good, because I do have an experience of last 24 years of sports and in international top level. So if you're willing to share that with the young kids, I mean, as you know that now I'm joining with the junior squad now under 21 team, and that is what I'm doing with them. I'm just sharing my experience. I'm telling them this is what is going to happen if you are playing against Australia. They will come up. They are a bit arrogant. They are physically fit. They are tough. They will try to thrash you, then they are learning that they'll mentally ready for that. And when you are playing against Pakistan, there is an emotional game where everyone want you to win. Everyone expect that you should not commit any mistakes, so these all things are really important to share with the young generation. And second thing is that you are an example, you are an idol for them. You are standing in front of them with medals, with a real experience, so it's quite easy for them to accept it. And definitely it's a role of mine as a senior player to to generate or to be an example for the next generation players, that once you're done with your career, what you should do, what you can do to develop your people, develop your sports. So I think this is the right way, this is the right path. Just educate your youngsters, tell them, share your experience with them, guide them. I mean, try to become a coach. If you are not getting a chance in the national level, go to your school, go to your village, try to train 2 kids. That will be more than enough, because that is what really important for us, because as long as we, the passionate sports person, are not coming up to develop our own sports, nobody else will do that. So we should take the responsibility of our sports. We should try to develop our sport from our side, and contribute your best, what you can, to promote the game from the grassroots level to the top level.
सुमित, आपकी क्या सोच है इस बारे में?
बिल्कुल सर, ऑलमोस्ट सारे पॉइंट्स जो श्रीजेश भाई ने कवर कर दिए हैं, बट मेरा मानना ये है कि व्हेन यू आर इन अ पैरा स्पोर्ट्स, आई थिंक यू आर गिविंग समवन अ रीजन टू लिव, बिकॉज जैसे जो मैंने फील किया है अपने एक्सीडेंट के टाइम पे, तो हमारे पास में एज अ सोर्स ऑफ मोटिवेशन उस इन 2015 को ही था, क्योंकि पैरा स्पोर्ट्स के बारे में अवेयरनेस नहीं थी। तो मैंने देखा है कि जिस भी इंसान के साथ में बाय चांस ऐसा कुछ हो जाता है एट द यंग एज, तो वो मोस्टली ये समझता है कि मेरी जिंदगी बर्बाद है और मैं क्या ही करूंगा अब। इवन उसकी सराउंडिंग्स जो होती है, उसकी सोसाइटी जहाँ पे वो रहता है, उसमें हर एक पल पे उसको एहसास दिलाया जाता है कि अब तुम किसी काम के नहीं हो, और मतलब क्या ही करोगे जिंदगी में, आपकी जिंदगी बर्बाद है। तो मेरे को ये लगता है कि जिस तरह से आज मैं सोशल मीडिया पे मैसेज रिसीव करता हूँ कि भाई मेरा भी ऐसे एक्सीडेंट हो गया, बट यू आर द रीजन की जिसकी वजह से हम डिमोटिवेट नहीं हो रहे, हम गलत रास्ते पे नहीं जा रहे। मैंने बहुत सारे टैलेंटेड बच्चे जो इनिशियल स्टेज पे बहुत अच्छा खेलते थे या किसी भी स्पोर्ट्स में, उनको देखा है कि बाय चांस उनके साथ में कुछ मिस हैपनिंग हो जाती है, तो वो फिर नशे की तरफ में या ऐसे अपनी जिंदगी को एक तरह से बर्बाद कर लेते हैं। तो आई थिंक पैरा स्पोर्ट्स उनकी लाइफ में एक ऐसा रोल प्ले करती है कि उनको एक रीजन देती है जीने का, दोबारा से उनको मोटिवेट करती है कि नहीं, अभी आपने जो खोया है वो कुछ भी नहीं है, अभी भी आप बहुत कुछ कर सकते हो। क्योंकि जब मेरा एक्सीडेंट हुआ, मेरे को मैं सोच रहा था कि मैं ढंग से चल पाऊंगा या नहीं, मतलब लोग क्या, बट आज बाय चांस मैं नहीं चाहता किसी के साथ में हो ऐसा, बट हो भी जाए तो वो जैसे मेरी वीडियोस देखेगा तो आई थिंक वो बहुत मोटिवेट होगा, और
सिर्फ वही
खत्म
नहीं,
तो नहीं, बट
हम सारे भी मोटिवेट हो जाएंगे।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल सर, बट कहीं ना कहीं बहुत ज्यादा हद तक उसका जो दुख है उस टाइम पे आई थिंक वो कम होगा, जैसा मेरे को फील होता है। और मैं जिस तरह से सोशल मीडिया पे इतने सारे मैसेजेस रिसीव करता हूँ, तो मैं खुद को एक ब्लेस्ड फील करता हूँ कि हाँ, मैं किसी की लाइफ में एज अ रोल ऑफ मोटिवेशन, एज अ इंस्पिरेशन, और मैं किसी को वैसे जीने की चाह दे रहा हूँ। तो आई थिंक एक तरह से जीवन सफल मानते हैं हम अपना, कि हाँ किसी की लाइफ में एज अ इंस्पिरेशन। और स्पोर्टिंग कम्युनिटी के लिए तो सर बिल्कुल, जैसे श्रीजेश भाई ने बताया कि अपने एक्सपीरियंस शेयर करना यंगर एथलीट्स के साथ में, क्योंकि वहां पे compete हर कोई करना चाहता है लेवल ऑफ द ओलंपिक्स एंड पैरालंपिक्स, बट जिस तरह की मेंटेलिटी वहां पे चाहिए होती है, वो आई थिंक एथलीट्स को एक्सेप्ट करनी पड़ेगी कि हाँ उस टाइम पे जाके किस तरह का प्रेशर आपको फील करना पड़ेगा। मैं अपनी बताऊं कि मोस्ट ऑफ द एथलीट्स हिचकते हैं कि हाँ हमें साइकोलॉजिकल क्लासेस नहीं लेनी चाहिए, बट मैंने टोक्यो से पहले खुद साइकोलॉजिकल क्लासेस ली थी कि हाँ, क्योंकि मैं फील करना चाहता था उस चीज को कि इतना प्रेशर बाय चांस मेरे पे एकदम से गिरेगा, क्योंकि इतने बड़े स्टेज पे पहली बार डिबेट पैरालंपिक्स था मेरा टोक्यो में, तो इतने बड़े स्टेज पे मैं खुद को कैसे अपनी जो हमने हार्ड वर्क किया उसको दिखा कैसे पाऊंगा। हार्ड वर्क तो एक अलग चीज है, बट उस टैलेंट को बाय चांस हम उसी दिन बाय चांस दिखा नहीं पाए, तो फिर मेरे को लग रहा है कि व्यर्थ तो नहीं, बट कहीं ना कहीं उसका इतना कुछ फायदा मिलेगा नहीं आपकी यंगर जनरेशन को। तो आप हर एक जो आपका सपोर्टिंग स्टाफ है उसका एक मदद लेनी भी एक एथलीट को वो करना चाहिए, कि ये ना सोचे कि मैं हूं और ये तो ऐसे ही है। तो आई थिंक ये एक पॉइंट है जो मैंने देखा एथलीट्स में लैग करते हुए। तो मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा सर कि ये चीजें भी जरूरी होती है, आपकी हार्डवर्क तो जरूरी होता है, बट आपको मेंटली उस लेवल पे प्रिपेयर करना वो आपकी टीम के लिए बहुत जरूरी होता है, और तभी आप दुनिया को दिखा पाओगे कि आपने पिछले 4 साल में या पिछले अपनी लाइफ में क्या मेहनत की है।
स्वप्निल, आप आते हो कोल्हापुर से, क्या आपको ऐसा लगता है कि एक ओलंपिक मेडलिस्ट का जो इन्फ्लुएंस होता है, इट इज इवन ग्रेटर इन द स्लाइटली इंटीरियर्स ऑफ द कंट्री? Do you feel the opportunity for you to have an influence, to be a force for good, is even greater?
या एक्चुअली जैसे कि कोल्हापुर में पहले भी एक मेडल आया काफी साल पहले, लाइक 7-2 years पहले, काशाबाज
हाँ,
जाधव।
मैंने सुना आपका भी उधर बस्ट लग रहा है अभी उनके साथ, खशबा यादव जी के साथ।
तो ऐसा है कि काफी बढ़िया से उन्होंने वेलकमिंग किया था कोल्हापुर सिटी में, और उनका जो कोल्हापुर वासी लोग हैं, जो पीपल्स है, तो उन्होंने काफी उनको स्पोर्ट्स में ज्यादा इनकरेज, लाइक उनको स्पोर्ट्स बहुत पसंद है। जैसे कि श्रीजेश भाई ने बोला था कि स्कूल में जाके हमें खुद से ही जो स्टूडेंट होते हैं उनसे बात करनी चाहिए, उनको थोड़ा सा मोटिवेशन देना चाहिए। तो मेरा ऐसा भी एक कहना है कि पेरेंट्स लोगों को भी समझना चाहिए और उनको थोड़ा समझाना चाहिए कि स्पोर्ट्स में भी करियर होता है, उनकी क्या इम्पोर्टेंस स्पोर्ट्स में होती है। क्योंकि काफ़ी सारे पेरेंट्स ऐसे है कि उनको ऐसा लगता है कि स्पोर्ट्स एक खाली बस नॉर्मल है, उसमें कुछ करियर होने वाला है नहीं है, तो पढ़ाई बस कर लो आप, कुछ इंजीनियर या डॉक्टर ऐसे कोई डिग्री ले लो, उसके बाद आपकी लाइफ बन सकती है, ऐसा उनका कहना होता है। बट मेरे हिसाब से ऐसा है कि ऐसा नहीं है, क्योंकि स्पोर्ट्स में भी बहुत सारी करियर्स हो सकते हैं लाइफ में, उसमें बहुत सारी डिसिप्लिन मिल जाती है और बहुत सारी चीज़ें भी मिल जाती है। तो आई थिंक बच्चों के साथ साथ पेरेंट्स लोगों को भी समझाना जरूरी है कि स्पोर्ट्स में बहुत सारी चीज़ें मैटर करती हैं।
And indeed, you know, at one level, what this conversation really tells us is that, you know, there's so much more to sport than just sport itself. In a way, sport is life because it teaches you so many lessons, and those lessons can get you success maybe at the Olympics, but even if they don't, there's a lot that you can learn from them. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Sreejesh. Thank you, Sumit.
Thank you.
And thank you,
Thank you so
Swapnil,
much, sir.
for this
Thanks, sir.
enlightening conversation.
And that's it for our virtual sessions. Don't forget that On the Ground session will also be telecast live on all of HT's platforms, our website and our YouTube channel. So join us then, and do of course write into us. You can also interact and send your feedback, maybe your questions, your observations on Twitter, Instagram, and all the social platforms that you follow as well. Thanks for watching.
I am the future that was born 100 years ago. I am the purpose that emerged with India's independence to be a force for business that makes doing good our business. Towards an independence where knowledge sets us free. To think big and achieve bigger. To take India to the world and the world to India.